Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back, 'cause it's root for the home team. They don't win, it's a shame, 'cause it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Welcome to Let's Get Two, the baseball podcast from the fans' perspective. Now here's your host, James Christopher.
And welcome to our Turkey Day, Thanksgiving Day episode of Let's Get Two. I am your host, James Christopher, and I love Thanksgiving. I'm going to be honest, from about Halloween until December 26th, I'm as happy as a clam. I'm a holiday guy. I love all the accoutrements, all the trappings of all of the holidays, particularly at this time of year. You might notice my super sweet baseballism Thanksgiving Day baseball cap. Again, I love everything about it. And we're coming to the end, and I'm a very big take stock guy. I think you should look back at your year's journey. You should look back at lessons to learn, things you did well, things you're thankful for. And I know it's very easy in 2020 to flush it down the drain. Heck, it's kind of an instinct that I have. You know, as you've seen on the show, I have really purchased a bunch of these Minor League Baseball 2020 shirts. And, you know, I don't really see wearing them beyond this year. A lot of them were purchased to support the teams that were selling them, like the Durham Bulls, like the Salem Red Sox, like the Corpus Christi Hooks. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll make a quilt or something, you know, like a keepsake. And then I thought to myself, do I want to remember this year any more than I absolutely have to? And I definitely understand and in some ways agree with that sentiment. You know, we're recording this early in the week. We're dropping it on the Friday before Thanksgiving. And the situation with the election is still unsettled. And there's been some really good news about COVID and the vaccine. And then some really questionable news about the military pulling out of the Middle East, which is bad. And wanting to let people drill in the Alaska National Forest. That's also bad. But it would be easy to get bogged down in that. And I think one of the things that we have to do as a country, you know, as we come out of 2020, there is now a light at the end of the tunnel. I think the vaccine symbolizes so many things. I think it means that there's an end game to all this. And I think that what we have to do is really work to be just focused on what is good and positive about the year. And I think if we look into it, I think we'll find something. And, you know, for me, for as much as it was disappointing to see the baseball season interrupted, canceled on many levels, it was also inspiring to see all of these minor league baseball clubs and the affiliated minor leagues scramble to still support their communities. For as much as most of the leagues in the independent and collegiate wood bat leagues were canceled, look at what the Sugarland Skeeters did and the Normal Cornbelters. They made something really cool out of nothing. People adapt, people move on. Americans, we seem divided, but there's a couple of things that we all share. And I think we share this idea that we can meet a challenge. And I think that in some ways we've really met the challenge of 2020 and COVID-19. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to be associated with baseball, even tangentially. I am thankful to have 2 adorable grandkids. I'm thankful to have just a smart and strong daughter in Jordan who, you know, we don't always agree on everything, but the one thing every father wants out of their kid is for them to be their own person, and she is that. And I am thankful to have just the most amazing woman who every day lowers herself by agreeing on that day to still be my wife, for me to be her husband. because she's a lot better than I am. I have definitely, I'm hitting above my weight, as they might say, or I don't even know that. That's how flummoxed she gets me. And I'm very thankful to be able to be doing this show. And I do this show out of the love of the game. I do this show because I truly love baseball, and I've fallen in love with all these lower levels of baseball. But I wouldn't keep doing it if I wasn't so encouraged by this baseball community that I'll talk a little bit about later in the show. But I had mentioned that December was going to be our final episode, and I meant for the season, and some people thought I meant forever. And there was like almost an intervention, like lots of DMs coming in and comments, and that really made me feel special. So I'm very thankful for that. So this year is hard. The only way to go into 2021 with some degree of positivity is to look back on what was good about the year, try to leave the rest of us behind us, and push forward. I think we can do it. And I think that we are resilient enough to keep moving. But we do have a great show for you today. We have got a bunch of teams coming on. Darien Sills-Evans is back because his Mets have a new owner. I think I'm more excited than he is. We're talking Astros. We're talking MLB. We got some Swamp Bats, some Cornbelters, and some Fireflies all on today's episode. So stay with us.
Who's on first? The Let's Get To Local 9, brought to you by Zoomer Sports.
So we are super excited to welcome to our Who's On First segment of the Thanksgiving episode of Let's Get To. We're thankful to have both John Katz and Ashlie DiCarlo from the Columbia Fireflies. How you guys doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. John, how are you?
Living the dream, my friend.
Living the dream. Tell me a little bit about yourselves before we jump into this. John, we'll start with you. How did you get interested in working in baseball in the first place and end up working for the Fireflies?
So the baseball part is actually really interesting. I never had any intention of working in sports. I was trying to continue my graduate studies at UMBC back in the 90s and couldn't find a job. So a couple of friends of mine from college were interning with Major League Baseball in the Arizona Fall League, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Nothing." And they said, "Well, send in your desktop publishing samples and all the stuff you did in college. And they're looking for someone who knows how to do marketing and promotions and desktop publishing." And a month later, I was on my way to Phoenix.
The Fall League, something else too, isn't it? It's a whole different kind of animal.
Yeah. It was, but it's an interesting way to get thrown into the business from all sides at once.
Ashlie, how about you? How did you end up, again, jumping into baseball and working for the Fireflies?
Yeah. So opposite story on my end. I actually went to college for sports. Went to South Carolina right down the street, sport management major. I always knew I wanted to work in baseball. That was kind of the sport I was around the most growing up. And the rumors started kind of freshman, sophomore year that they were bringing a team here to Columbia. And it just so happened that perfect timing, the Fireflies showed up in 2016, which was my graduating year, and I needed my final internship. And I was like, I want to stay in Columbia. I don't know anything about minor league baseball outside of the fact that I went growing up. So let's see what it's like. Took a ticketing internship. And 5 years later, 6, I don't even know what years, 4 years, 5 years later, I'm somehow in the director of marketing role with the same team. So completely different story from John. If he were to live out his long tenure in baseball, I'm with the same team for 5 years, and I've absolutely loved it. It's been great.
One of the things that, or one of the sort of reasons why we did the show in the first place, I'm a Houston kid. I practically grew up in the Astrodome. I didn't know really anything about minor league baseball until I married a San Antonio girl who the mission's obviously big deal. Community is such the driving force behind what drives these teams. John, talk a little bit about just how important the community that the Fireflies are to the community in Columbia and how important the community are to you guys.
I think it goes the other way around. I think without the community, there is no baseball team. We are here to serve our community and to be of service to our community. We don't even often refer to ourselves as a baseball team, as more of a site at Segra Park to bring generations of people together. Again, as a gathering place for the community, you go back to the good old days, I guess mid-February 2020, but we look at the calendar year of 2019, we had 305 events here at Segra Park that had nothing to do with baseball whatsoever. So you layer in 70 home games, you're talking 375 events in a 365-day calendar. So this ballpark gets used for any number of things, not the least of which is baseball. But we also have that opportunity to add 50, 60, 70,000 more people to the mix just by hosting other events. And that could be concerts, it could be weddings, bar mitzvahs, all sorts of different rites of passage. Any way we can bring people to this venue and bring them together, that's why we're here.
I wanted to ask you guys, before we talk a little bit about the contraction news, but a little bit about COVID. Like everybody, you guys, your lives were put on hold. You were waiting, I'm assuming, for weeks of information at a time, trying to find out. What was it like for you guys going through the run-up of spring training canceled to the season canceled, and how did you guys adapt to keep serving that community?
I think, like most other people, we were in a period of mourning. We knew, I think we kind of made a pivot as to what our plans were probably mid-April and started setting our plans into motion shortly thereafter. The ballpark was and remains closed since about the 16th or 17th of March. End of May, middle of May, we decided we wanted to see what we could do safely. As restaurants were able to open with small capacities, we decided to turn our club lounge into a restaurant. And we did that a couple of nights. And what we got was a lot of feedback from people that said, hey, we would love to do this, but we're not comfortable dining outside. So next week we pivoted to outside. And, we ran our restaurant, Fridays and Saturday nights, pretty much all the way through last weekend. And, what we're doing now is we're turning into an events business. So, we've done a couple of comedy shows. We've had a couple of movie nights. We've got Rob Schneider coming in, at the end of this week. Of course, that could be awkward depending on when you air this, but Rob Schneider's on his way. A screening of Elf is on its way. And, that's the way for us to do what we do best, because more than anything else, what we miss is being around each other as a staff, and what we miss is being around the community that we serve. So finding little ways to do that throughout the process has been really critical to, keeping everyone's morale as high as we can possibly do, understanding that, it's now been 16, 17 months since we've had a baseball game.
Yeah.
And it'll be another 5-6 months before we come back, because we still have no idea when it's going to start again.
Ashlie, you're, being new in your career, what have you learned about yourself and all of this, like, pivoting and the changing times and all of this uncertainty?
Yeah, it's been a wild year. I took over as director of marketing in August of last year. So I haven't even worked a baseball game in this position. So just pivoting that way and having my whole plan for the season. I was like, okay, that's what's going to happen. I'm so excited about it. And then April comes, like, that all just fell apart. It's definitely, I've learned a lot about myself and kind of how quickly I can pivot, and kind of leading a team through that pivot has been an interesting challenge. Everyone's kind of looking at it a different way. I mean, we're all together as a team. We still have staff meetings and weekly and things like that. We're always in touch, but kind of like trying to keep people on board and lead the charge. And like, hey, marketing doesn't stop. As much as we don't have baseball, and the times we didn't have events was hard because it was like, we're just making content to try to stay in touch. But trying to learn how to pivot a whole team was a big challenge for me, a big learning experience for me as a leader in this new role.
John, to your point, this episode is going to drop Friday morning, which means between now and Friday morning, lots of things could change. But you guys, we've talked about contraction on this show the whole time. And I think that there are a lot of reasons why contraction, I guess, makes sense for MLB teams. There's a lot of reasons why I think it's incredibly bad for baseball as a whole. But it is where it is. We are where we are. And according to your Twitter profile, you guys are newly single and ready to mingle. The TBD level affiliate of the TBD team in the TBD league. How shocked were you, John, at finding out that Columbia was on the list? And I will preface this by saying we do have some sources. We'd never heard your names at all. And in fact, we had heard a lot of, well, definitely not those guys because of just the Supreme facility and the Supreme organization. How shocked were you?
Well, so we're talking about two different things. We are not on any list. We will be one of the 120 teams. We have not been contracted.
Right. And that's clear. That's what I meant by things could change. By Friday, you could be an affiliate again by the time this thing drops. Exactly. But just in the initial burn, how did that feel to find out you guys were not part of the Mets again anymore?
Look, for the last 6 to 8 weeks, you start hearing the rumors that the Florida State League is going to go low A. And at that point, we're like, all right, probably the Mets aren't coming back. But, is there a chance early on? We heard we might move up to high A. We've heard we might stay in low A. We don't know where we're going to be. But again, it's. I guess it was a little bit of a shock the way we found out. But I'd say, in fairness to the Mets, it's not a shock that they're going to be, keeping their low A affiliate in Port St. Lucie.
Ashlie, I wanted to ask you. With the Twitter messaging, there were a lot of teams that found out the same way you guys did. Friends of the show, the Trenton Thunder, had a very different reaction, a much more direct reaction. And I think it makes sense too. I think, you were talking, John, you were able to kind of put things together and look at the map and say, hey, maybe we don't make sense for the Mets. Trenton not making sense for the Yankees. I'm not going to ask you guys to weigh in on that, but that's a less of a stretch because geographically it does make sense. There are lots of social economic reasons why that maybe did or didn't happen. But you guys chose to be a little bit more lighthearted with it. And you had the tweet that got viral really. I mean, like, I can't tell you the number of text messages with a link to your tweet going, have you seen this, Jim? Why take that approach? And it's an approach I think really appreciated by the baseball community.
Yeah. So as John mentioned, us not being affiliated with the Mets wasn't a shock internally. As you mentioned again, how we heard the news was a shock. Like, I walked out of a meeting and I had texts from the one initial tweet that we quoted, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And I walked into John's office and I was like, do you see this? He's like, already got a statement. So for us, there wasn't any shock on the Mets thing. We kind of knew that was coming. So, and we've always had a great relationship with the Mets. We have nothing against them. They've been great to work with. John can tell you the exact number of years, but however long we've worked with them, they've been great. Yeah. So I think just taking a lighthearted, fun approach was kind of like, well, it's out of our hands. We have no control over anything that's happening. So why not just have some fun with it? It was a little poke because, we did find out via Twitter, but again, no hard feelings there. It wasn't an initial shock. So it wasn't like a mourning phase we had to go through or anything like that. It was just like, let's have fun with this, see where this goes. Again, all out of our hands. So what else can you really do besides have fun at it?
And again, most of the baseball community seems to agree. Baseball America, I think, even in their write-up of it. In fact, when we first broke the news on our show that, you guys are probably going to be one of the first ones to get reaffiliated when all that makes sense. So then how do you pivot? I noticed that you already put your Mets affiliated stuff on sale. You had the sale for that stuff. But I do think one of the strengths is that you guys are the Fireflies. You might have even had people go and not know who your affiliate was versus, say, the Staten Island Yankees, right? Like, you have a probably a different road to hoe there. So what is next for you guys? Do you guys just wait it out, or do you still keep moving forward, looking for whatever 2021 is going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're continuing to plan, excuse me, for 2021. We'll get a phone call at some point and we'll look forward to that day. But until then, nothing really changes for us. We know that we will be playing. We don't know when opening day is yet. We don't know what league and what teams will be playing yet. But beyond that, nothing changes. The experience, I feel bad for Ashlie and her team. All the work they put into planning an amazing 2020. And then, it's almost like Lucy holding the football and Charlie Brown running up to it. And the football is 2020 and that's what happened to our marketing team. But I also know, Ashley's been with us long enough that I know that she's not going to just, say, okay, well, this was this night, so we're just going to move it ahead a year. Because she doesn't operate like that. She's not going to be satisfied. If she hasn't already, she'll go through her head and go, okay, what about this could have gone better? And then those changes will be implemented for 2021. So, in some senses, it's almost like we got an extra year to plan things. But, to Ashley's point, we're not not grieving over the loss of our affiliation. I think in some cases we're still grieving over the loss of 2020.
Sure.
But it's still an ever forward approach. And to Ashley's point, look, we've been affiliated with the Mets between Savannah and Columbia since 2007. The 5 years, 6 years, 6 years I was in Savannah, I mean, we had 5 playoff teams. We had three teams that should have won the Sally League. Only one of them did. And, I think anyone would tell you that was probably the least likely of the 3 teams to win it. We've had a great experience with the Mets. We wish them well. And, like Ashlie said so appropriately, single and ready to mingle. Let's go. We're ready.
Yeah. To follow up on that a little bit, it's kind of fun. Like this little bit of freedom. It was almost like not a rut of events, but kind of the same thing for our marketing team, pushing out events, trying to figure out how to get people in ballpark. So this little glimpse of freedom and this little time to have fun has been good for us. I kind of feel like a college football recruit on draft day. I have like 5 hats that were rumors we've heard of where we could go, kind of sitting just right for me to pull that, throw it in a video. So it's kind of opened up our creativity a lot on the marketing side of like, hey, where can we go? What kind of fun can we have with it? What can we do with it? It's been a fun little moment of freedom, and we have some things brewing. So it should be a good couple months for us here.
It's like you're just going to eat, pray, love it. You're going to like find yourself a little bit, and then you're going to be ready for another relationship. Exactly. I want to ask one question that I think is maybe a bit of a downer, though. John, it's a really small community we're in, and I'm sure some of your colleagues don't know that they're going to have another affiliate. Like, how do you feel about, like, where does your heart go for those guys? I'm thinking about the teams that are facing uncertainty of like moving to collegiate wood bat in the Appy League, for example. Just any thoughts on what that situation's like?
I think it's an absolute atrocity. You look at one of the things about minor league baseball that is so appealing, and much like you, I never went to a minor league baseball game because I grew up in the shadows of Fenway Park. Literally the first minor league baseball game I went to, I was working at. Wow. It was like, I think 2 years later, I happened to go home and I took my dad to see the Paw Sox at McCoy Stadium. But, minor league baseball is Americana. And, up until the contraction talk started, what was it, 90 or 85 or 90% of the population was within an hour to 90-minute drive from a minor league stadium. And, depending on what you hear about independent teams coming in, there's 42 or 43 potentially former minor league markets that are going to be impacted in some way. Yes, some will be able to have the wood bat league or some sort of prospect league, and some will be left holding the bag. But you've got people who've been in this. I've been in this business almost 30 years, and as of last week, and I interned with 11 people who were all quality. One became a major league interim general manager. We've had folks all over the place. I'm the only one left in minor league baseball. The only one.
Wow.
And again, we soldier on because that's what we do. And you talk about being able to take a lighthearted approach because that's what minor league baseball is. It's Major League Baseball without the seriousness. Right. And that's what makes us so appealing. But we're taking it away from markets across this country. And for me, I think it's bad for the game. I think it's bad for the game that, and I'm hopeful that the one baseball plan comes to fruition. Because, I see it, my kids stopped playing baseball when they were young, but they played soccer. And once you get to a certain level and you start having to do travel ball, whether that's soccer or baseball, softball, whatever it might be, all of a sudden, there are barriers to entry and barriers to participation, generally financial, right? That really impact marginalized communities and their athletes. If that's the positive that we take away from this down the road, then, maybe you look back and say, okay, if this is why we did it, then okay. But if that's not the case, then, it's just unfortunate. And I grieve for my friends who, are leaving markets or leaving baseball because they have to, not because they want to.
Then I guess I will finish with another question for each of you, and then a sort of a wild card one. I tend to never take a skyless following approach about anything. I'm 7 years military. If I would have done that, it would have been an awful experience for everyone involved back in the day. What is one thing do you think we can look forward to as far as minor league baseball in 2021? Something to feel a little positive about. We'll let Ashlie go first.
Yeah, I think people keep saying we're going to be back and better than ever, and I think that's the most accurate statement about minor league baseball. As John mentioned, like it's a community of survivors. The community is the game day staff, the full-time staff. People are going to want to be back at the ballpark, and the staff are going to want to make it 5 times more of a better experience than it has been. And I think just how many people love minor league baseball, just knowing that it's going to be 5 times better because of all the dedication that people have put in for the last year. People are committed to this, and I think just the product is going to be 5 times better. It's going to be entirely different because it's going to be a lot of digital. It's going to be maybe not on-field promos. It's going to look different, but the excitement and the energy level that minor league baseball is going to bring back to their communities when gates finally open again is going to be ridiculous. It's going to be amazing.
John?
I don't know that can do any better than Ashlie just did.
It was pretty good.
It's all about amplification, right? So, I look back at literally the first summer. I haven't worked baseball games in almost 30 years. I look at what has happened in our nation. You're seeing it more as the wave kind of grows. More people or more places getting locked down, more restrictions in the interest of public health. At some point, when there was great news today on a vaccine from Moderna. At some point when we get to the spring, things are going to turn.
Yeah.
With hopefully multiple vaccines available, respiratory therapies, therapeutics, and all these things, where people are going to be ready to come out of their shells. Because a lot of people, and I think we'd all be crazy if we said that, minor league baseball, and we're no exception, has a lot of fans that are a little bit older. So, this kind of goes back to the whole thing of, why move your restaurant from inside to outside? Because we know our markets.
Sure.
And I think people will be ready to celebrate. And that may be a different time for everybody. And that's fine. We don't know when we get to opening day if we'll be at 20% capacity, 80% capacity, 50%. As long as we can have people in the ballpark watching and celebrating and enjoying, we'll be happy. But we want to be that. Minor league baseball has always served as this escape from reality for people. That's what you do. You look forward to it all week, or you make a last minute spur of the moment decision to come out to the game. And that's where you can, you kind of compartmentalize some of those other things that are going on in your life. And for 3 hours, you get to put that away and escape from reality. And if we're being honest, we've had a lot of reality.
We've had so much
we want to escape from. Yeah. So as you kind of go through all this, and hope springs eternal. And this spring, the experience at ballparks across the country are going to be met with this amplified enthusiasm, not just from the people like us who have been missing our fans so much this year. So much it's hard to even quantify it. It's just been so much that we've been missing them. To have them back, to welcome them and show them a great time again. I mean, you can't put a price on that, and what that will do, not only for us as a staff and as an organization, but really for our community and 120, what will be 120 communities, minor league communities across the country.
Okay, so Ashlie, hard question here. What is your go-to Thanksgiving dessert?
Ooh, dessert. There's actually so I'm not a big dessert person, not a big sweet tooth person. So there's one pie. I think it's a Marie Calendar, but it's like a triple berry pie. I have to have that every Thanksgiving. Honestly, the only pie I really like, but there's one certain pie, triple berry thing. It's so good.
And John, go-to side item at Thanksgiving.
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to begin. So I do all the Thanksgiving cooking at my house.
Okay.
Or as 3 years ago, I had 40 people up in the club lounge here at the ballpark. I needed a commercial kitchen.
Wow.
So two that I really like, I know you asked for one, but I'm going to go ahead and make it double the fun. So I make scratch made cornbread dressing.
Oh, wow. That sounds delicious.
Which is outstanding. And then, although I messed it up the first time I did it, there's a great side dish, which is peas and shallots with pan-seared pancetta, which, as long as you don't overdo the pancetta, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And we'll be on the menu this year, even though my family is voting against traditional Thanksgiving food. So we might might do steaks, and then I'll make my Thanksgiving sides.
I think
you can tell John's not from the South because he didn't say mac and cheese.
Oh, no, I'm not a mac and cheese guy. Like, to me, but I'm also a cranberry guy, and nobody else in my family.
I love cranberry sauce. I have to have cranberry sauce.
I go nuts for it.
Never did. My dad always, when we always had it in a can, and it always reminded me of just jiggly dog food when you shake out the wet dog food and it just stands up.
Yeah.
I never really got that.
That's my go-to. The can. That's all I need. Just give me a can.
That's home for me. Ashlie, as we wrap up, John mentioned some stuff at the ballpark this week. Rob Schneider's coming. Just throw out for the people out there what they can do for the rest of 2020.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Rob Schneider, people in the South, we don't like coming out in the cold, so it's getting a little less event heavy here, even though it's probably in the 60s. But yeah, so Rob Schneider secret preview coming out in 40 minutes on our Twitter. But we'll have Elf on December 4th, so a good showing of that. Right for the holidays, doing some things internally. Breakfast with Santa, we fun for our kids club members. A lot of holiday bundles coming out shopping wise, but so not event heavy. So we keep people indoors and out of the cold, but a lot of deals coming up, maybe merch wise. So we'll be on the lookout for that.
Well, John, Ashlie, thanks so much for being on Let's Get Two. We look forward to following where the Columbia Fireflies will be next, and you'll have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
you do the same.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Holler and a Swaller, a chug of ballpark brew, presented by The Hitter Sports.
So we are here on Holler and a Swaller, but we're also combining it with Show Me the Merch, in part because the episodes, could run a little long, and I want to keep the content on the teams paramount. So if we have to combine some segments here, we're going to do it. But I do want to start out with the Show Me the Merch segment, which we're going to do a shout out to the Hudson Valley Renegades. Now, the cool thing about the Hudson Valley Renegades, filmmaker from years ago at ARF, knew that I was such a passionate baseball guy that he actually got me my very first Hudson Valley Renegades hat, which is sat proudly on our shelf. And so when the Renegades were named one of the Yankees' new affiliates, I wanted to get a new hat. I already had a hat. And so then I grabbed their sweet Copa de la Diversión hat. How about that? Isn't that sweet? So congratulations to Hudson Valley. We will be out to see you guys this year. God willing, and the creek don't rise, which might be the second time this episode I've used that saying, and therefore like the fifth time in my life. I don't know why I'm doing that. But on to the Holler and a Swaller segment. Sponsored by The Hitter Sports. Follow him on Twitter. We definitely have different movie tastes. We've learned this. But yeah, if you want to talk Yankees, you want to talk Blade Runner, you want to talk Lord of the Rings, talk whatever, The Hitter Sports is a guy that's got an opinion and also lets you air your own opinion. So it's very unique in the Twitter sphere. But on to the Holler and a Swaller segment. So we're going to be doing the Merry Christmas, Happy New Year from Anchor Brewing. Anchor Brewing is a brewing company out of San Francisco, California, which is cool for two reasons. One, it marks the first time in this adjusted segment when we stopped going to ballparks because of COVID and started just focusing on microbrews that it isn't one from Texas. And it's also for the hometown of Jess Knaster, one of the most important contributors on this show. Now, I usually do the ASMR thing where you let you hear me open it, but I didn't this time. I have gone ahead and put it in my Christmas vacation pint glass. It says "Joy to the Squirrel," and then it's got the shitter is full RV thing. That right there is an RV, but don't you go falling in love with it, because it's leaving and going with us when we leave here next month. When I started thinking about the Holler and the Swaller segment for this episode, I was pretty set on the idea that I wanted to toast some members of our team and people that just love baseball that have been so supportive of our show as a way of thanking them. And what always happens is I forget people. I'm super ADD, and then it becomes a thing. And, if that happens, it's not intentional. So I do want to raise this delicious looking. I broke the rules. I drank first. I do want to raise this glass to a lot of groups of people. And I want to start with the main team behind Let's Get Two. That's Andy Tom Chesney, who anchors our Astros coverage. Scott McIntyre, who anchors our MLB coverage in general. Those two guys are super important because I felt like MLB coverage was important for this show, but wasn't really the driving force behind the show. So I needed to find folks who could always speak intelligently on those subjects and then kind of help drive that area of the show, because I think it is what attracts listeners. I want to, do a toast to Stu Clary, who is proof that you can find really good people on the internet. That sounds like we're dating online. Maybe we are. I don't know. We'll see how the face-to-face goes. But also talks a lot of love for Major League Baseball and provides for us a perspective of a guy who's been watching the game a lot longer than most people that I interact have. I'm not saying he's old. I'm saying he's older. I'm the one who couldn't get out of bed this morning. And I think about like Jess Knaster, who has been very open with his experiences through minor league baseball and is helping us really navigate this changing landscape of the sport. Andrew Nelson, who's become the unofficial historian. My brother Timothy, who is really as a sounding board for most things on the show and helped me create it. And then I think about all the people that have supported the show who don't have to. Guys like the Hitter Sports and Emily Nyman and MrsStealYoBase and Braves Emily and on and on and on. Paul Caputo, Erik the Peanut Guy, all these people that are just like generous for no reason other than they're good people. So when I think about 2020 and I think about how hard it's been to navigate this year, the thing that has made it easier has been people like that and so many others I know that I missed. I wanted to do a shout out to Alex, who's kind of a newer Twitter friend that we've, really connected. So it's again, when I think about 2020, I feel like I have two choices. I could think about all the things that have sucked and the piling on that's happened, not just with COVID but also like with my personal life. So I could think about that, or I could think about all the really good people that are still here and that have continued to support me and have inspired me to support others, because I think that thing is a momentum that you can carry forward. And I will always, of course, toast last and most importantly, my wonderful wife, Jessica, who there's just love's not a big enough word, to quote John Candy in the best Thanksgiving Day movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So to all of you out there, have a happy Thanksgiving. Holler and a swaller, baby. I chugged that for the Hitter Sports because that man can chug a beer like no one I know. Now, the caveat, of course, is I only filled this halfway up, and I let it sit at room temperature so it was smoother to drink. He's got like 6 inches on me, so I don't want to tell you. In fact, he's so tall that you know what you call the Hitter Sports in a dark alley? Sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, please adjust your scorecards. We have a special guest in the lineup.
We are excited to welcome back to the show our favorite guy from collegiate summer league baseball, period, Matt Durkin from the Normal Cornbelters. Matt, you guys have been busy figuring out what 2021 is going to look like, and it's going to look a little bit different in a lot of ways. So let's start with how 2021 is going to be a little different around the Corn Crib.
Yeah, so instead of most stadiums that just focus on having one collegiate wood bat team there, we'll be having the Cornbelters returning to the Prospect League. So that'll be approximately 30 dates of baseball next summer. And then on top of that, with the KCL being so successful due to the pandemic this past summer, that'll be returning too. So it'll be about 65 to 75 dates of baseball between the two. And we're really just trying to make it unnoticeable to the fan of whether they're there for a Prospect League game or a KCL game, and just really work on building that experience and having them have a good time while at the ballpark.
Okay, so let me break this down then. Okay, so I'm essentially, obviously the Normal Cornbelters main will be playing in the Prospect League against the Hoots and all those guys.
Yep.
On top of that, we're going to go back to 4 squads again, 4 teams all playing double headers?
Yeah, so they'll be with the KCL double headers every single time. They'll play about 45 games. And then the Bobcats will be one of the teams, so they'll be back. And then the other 3, we're mainly working with corporate partners to have some name the team contests sponsored by them. So we don't have anything set in stone for the remaining 3 teams yet, but I'd expect the Bobcats and the other teams to be announced in the next few months.
Man, this is so exciting. So it really was that big a hit, huh? Having the 2 double headers, the whole thing. People loved it.
Yeah, so it honestly was just a spur of the moment thing, and we were saying, sorry, hey, maybe it'll work. We'll see what it does. And I mean, it raised attendance 93%, so you can't really argue with those numbers. So we said, hey, we'll just try both of them and see where we go from there.
So you guys did release your promotional calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, will those be Normal Cornbelters dates, or will those be KCL dates, or don't know, don't care, come out to the ballpark?
Yeah, so our main goal is we're just trying to get people to the ballpark and don't really have them care whether it's a Cornbelters or a KCL game, with the exception maybe family members. So we're going to try and do 6 Cornbelters and 6 KCL for the Corn Bash, but we won't really have those set in stone until February with the Prospect League schedule comes out. But we have an idea of which ones will be KCL and which ones will be Cornbelters going into it. We're just going to try and work the best we can to make sure those become possible.
You know, it's funny because coming out of the pandemic and out of the contraction, collegiate summer league baseball is getting probably bigger than it's ever been. I mean, you guys are housing 5 teams. I'm sure you've seen the news of the Appy League becoming Collegiate Woodback and perhaps the New York Penn League. Is there enough talent to go around?
For sure. When you think about it, college baseball itself is going to be changing over the next few years too. So you'll have D1 players, D2, D3, JUCO, and NAIA. So there's just thousands of schools across the country that house maybe 20 to 40 players. So you break up all of those, there's going to be plenty of talent to go around. And it's mainly just going to come down to each ballpark and each team, what they can do to really increase that player's experience and make them want to routinely go to those different destinations.
You know, you guys were our Collegiate Summer League Franchise of the Year for a reason. You're forward-looking. You're always, looking forward. And we're in the middle of a hot spot again with COVID. I'm sure it's as bad in Illinois as it is here in Texas.
Yeah.
Does the vaccine, though, give you guys a little bit of confidence knowing the vaccine should be hitting everybody in April? You guys should be able to go full steam ahead?
Yeah, so the way we've looked at it is we kind of dealt with COVID already this past summer. We had tons of guidelines in the ballpark. We made sure our workers were tested routinely and made sure it was just as safe as possible for everyone in attendance. So whether there's a vaccine in time by March, April, which they're projecting, or whether we just have to go through all this again next summer, we're really just going to make sure people's safety is our number one priority when they enter the corn crib.
Such an exciting time. So will you get a chance to at all relax over the holidays, or how long are you working until it's time to get started?
Yeah, so right now we just introduced ticket packages today, but for the most part, we're doing corporate renewals for the time being. it's going to probably be a little slow at this time of the year, especially with everything COVID going on. But in the upcoming 2021, which, I mean, we're all looking for the final getting out of 2020.
No kidding.
It'll for sure pick up in the early winter months.
Well, Matt, again, thank you so much for being on the show, for being such a big part of the show, and have a great Thanksgiving. And we will talk to you at the very beginning of next year.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
And now to the dugout, featuring Darien Sills-Evans.
We're excited and tickled to be joined by Darien Sills-Evans, our local Met guy. Hey, how's it going, man?
Good.
So it's the moment that sports fans get to experience 3, 4, maybe 5 times in a lifetime. New ownership. Trevor Bauer thinks he's already doing a good job. I don't know if that's him auditioning for a job. What are your thoughts initially on the new ownership for the Mets?
I'm always optimistic, and any new ownership in this case is welcome. The Wilpons were a disaster, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. It was just unbearable. And the Mets is, yes, they're the B franchise, B baseball franchise in New York, but they deserve so much better, and their fans deserve so much better, because if there's a loyal baseball fan in New York, it's going to really be the Mets, because you're stuck being perpetual losers. Now, whether or not this new ownership can excite the fans and excite the city, that I guess will tell how these trades work out in the next couple of weeks or days. And yeah, so it's all about that. Get us some good trades, get some cool people on the roster, make it interesting, and I think we'll have a team again. We'll have a team that I think people will be excited to go see again.
One of the things that Trevor Bauer actually did talk on his show, and the bullet points were, he likes the fact that the new owners, the Cohens, are engaging on Twitter with fans and finding out how to make game experiences. One of the things that I took from what his plan is that it's accepting the fact that they can't compete with the Yankees the way the Yankees do it, but also saying we'd like to build a championship in 3 to 5 years. It seems like that does mean we're going to rebuild the foundation and work towards something. Yeah.
And at least you're coming at it from a realistic place, because you're not going to change that team or the culture around in Queens. 3 to 5 years could even be optimistic. But I think what you're going to want to see is some kind of incremental improvement over that time. And if they manage to get a pennant in that time, that's great. Then I don't think they're going to win it in 3 or 5 years. I think they're still pretty far away from that. But
you really are a Mets fan. They really have beaten you to death.
It's hard, man. And now living in a town that is full of winners, you look back at the Mets and you go, why am I putting myself through that? This is...
Well, let me ask you this, though. So there's a couple of free agents that are available for the Mets, and I want to talk about your adopted hometown in a second. But, Bauer is out there. Springer is out there. Realmuto is out there. Any one of those guys, would that be a sign to you that, yeah, this is going to be a little different?
It would be a sign that they're taking it seriously and taking a rebuilding seriously, and not kind of, going after names that are marquee names in New York that don't really add anything to the team, like a Robinson Cano.
Yeah.
Who I'm sure is a great guy, but the reason why he was added to the team was because he was great on another New York team. And so if we're talking about really rebuilding and really kind of changing what the goal of the Mets is going to be, yeah, it starts with having players like that. And who's the other one they're talking about? Lindor.
Yeah, trading for Lindor. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So, and the people he'll have like different feelings about it, but I think it would be a cool, good thing. I mean, young guys like that are what makes it interesting. And the roster is just so broken down right now. It is so decrepit.
It does seem like if you trade, like let's say you got Lindor in a trade, and then you have a rotation that is DeGrom and Stroman, and then now Trevor Bauer, you're now running out 3 of the best starters in baseball.
Right.
In a division that was competitive but seems wide open. No offense to all my Braves fans that are listening to the show, but it does seem like that could put you immediately into at least the race for the division.
Yeah, I mean, you still have the Braves to contend with, and the Nationals always, seem to keep it busy and interesting. But, I mean, it will put the Mets at least back into the conversation. And they haven't been in that conversation for over a decade. So I think, why not? Why not them? They have the money,
Yeah.
and they should be making these moves at this point. And, yeah, I think the Coens they've got to get some bang for their buck. I mean, especially at what they paid for this team. They've got to, make something happen.
Yeah. When I saw that, I was just like, it's a level of money I don't even understand.
Yeah. I mean, I remember what did the Wilpons buy the Mets for? It was something, by today's standards, it's so cheap,
Yeah, I think Jim Crane bought the Astros for $500 million in Part of My Soul.
Right.
Which I'm still paying on. But you are transplant, and I just want to, real quick, man, what a year for the city of Los Angeles in a sports perspective, because it has been mostly good. Lakers, the Dodgers, but all of that sort of overshadowed with the loss of Kobe. What's it been like just living there and kind of experiencing all 3 of those events?
Yeah, it's hard to even believe that all happened in 1 year. I mean, Kobe's passing was such a significant event in the city that it seemed on its own that it took a year for the city to deal with that, even before we got to COVID. And, I'm a basketball fan, not like you, but I was never a huge Kobe fan. And the impact on the people and the fans in Los Angeles was something I don't think I've ever seen. I can't imagine a New York athlete passing and having New Yorkers react the way that they did here to Kobe. I mean, murals everywhere. People were legitimately in mourning for over a month, and then had all the services and all that stuff. It was really emotional for a town that kind of prides itself on not showing emotion and not having any real emotion and kind of being super optimistic. And even if it's fake, it was kind of interesting to see people who would never even care about sports kind of be impacted by it. Then once COVID hit and we lost all of our sports, that also was kind of painful, because the thing about LA is that it's an outdoor all year city. So you can't even go to the park and see people playing baseball or see people playing basketball or soccer or anything. And I had to stop doing everything. I was just working out of my garage and making my asthma worse because my garage is full of dust. So, when what I really wanted to do was being outside and playing a pickup game of anything.
Yeah.
But the World Series win and the NBA Finals win, even though they hardly felt like they were they didn't feel like the real NBA Finals. They didn't really feel like the World Series. It all felt like you were champions, but it felt like we were champions of, to me anyway, champions of what's mostly like an exhibition season.
Yeah.
That said, we get to hang a banner. Everyone's going to have opening day next year will be very exciting for everyone. And that's great. But yeah, I think the town needed that little bit, but you know what? A lot of towns across America needed that, I mean, every town across America dealt with the Corona, dealt with Black Lives Matter protests, dealt with, civil unrest. And I think we all needed a little bit of that kind of emotional release. And it's kind of unfortunate that LA had to hog it for, for the whole country, you know.
It was unfortunate for Blake Snell, that's for sure.
Right. So,
yeah, but you know, I will actually challenge one thing that you said though. I mean, yeah, I get that it felt weird, and I think I said on the show that it was probably the most miserable I've ever been watching a baseball season. I think because of the Astros sort of having that fallout, but you know, for everything that it took to get the season pulled off, for the Dodgers to win it the way they did it, I almost think it's harder than winning 162 because of just the emotional taxing that they went through to do it. And you know, they were the best team going in and they were the best team coming out. Yeah.
Well, you know, and I'm not sure they would have been in 162 games, but it worked out. And, you know, I'm sure Los Angeles will take it and keep it. And because certainly if the Yankees win, they'd be like, yes, we won another one, just like all of our others.
28. So as we wrap up, then, you know, it's Thanksgiving. This is a Thanksgiving episode. What is one thing you were thankful for in 2020? I know it's hard to really factor it in, but looking at sports, all that stuff, what was just one moment that you thought, at least this is still here?
Man, there's so much, but I mean, just on a personal note for you in this show, I would say that, you know, our friendship and being a part of this podcast has been great, because I don't really get to talk about sports with anyone. My kids don't care about it. My wife doesn't care about it. So it's great to be able to speak with like-minded people and work things out and hear other opinions, and instead of just whatever stuff you have brewing in your head. So yeah, man, I appreciate you and I appreciate this show. But then, you know, everything else is just, we'll get through it. Everything else, we're here and we're alive and we're extremely fortunate. I can't like shit on that. It's like I'm lucky that I'm here and I have my family, and I think all of that is great. But yeah, man, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
So we're jumping into Go Astros with Andy Tom Cheston, and Andy today has really stumbled into being...
I'm getting a tweet from you.
Oh,
I'd like to welcome a new affiliate's host of Go Astros, Jeff Passan. This is how I find out. I find out via tweet. Are you Rob Manfred?
Listen, I just felt like the best interest of the show was to move to look, it's not better, Andy. They're not better. They're just different. But I thought it better for me to not tell you first.
So you own part of Jeff Passan now, is what I'm hearing.
I've definitely.
You purchased 51% of Jeff Passan.
Yes. When you see his hair game improve, you will see my influence, just like I'm assuming. And so as you can tell, definitely, this has got to be the most synergistic episode of this show, because we are having everybody who normally runs a segment come on to talk about their affiliate or their team of choice dumping an affiliate. Let's talk through this. Sugarland Skeeters. Let's get the bad out of the way. What is wrong with this move?
I mean, I know you want to talk about the Skeeters, but I think the bad is the relationships that – I understand the business side of it, but the relationships that are being destroyed because of this. Just before we started recording, I went to the Tri-City Valley Cats website. They still list themselves on their website as the short season Class A affiliate of the Houston Astros. We all know the New York Penn League is being asked to be converted into a collegiate wood bat league. They are in the New York Penn League. There is not going to be short season Class A baseball for the major affiliates anymore. So they're just waiting to be told. And not unlike our little passion play at the very beginning of this segment.
Our Passan play.
No one has contacted them. I'm sure they know. I'm sure the writing's on the wall. But no one has picked up the phone to tell them, hey, your 19-year relationship with the Houston Astros is over. Oh, by the way, that's the second longest affiliate relationship that the Astros have had in their 65-year history. second only to the Columbus Mudcats / Astros. And it brings us to Round Rock and Sugarland. I think there's a lot of positive with the Sugarland move, and we'll talk about that in a second. But
Sure.
the big negative to me is that Jim Crane, whether he was told to or whether he decided to do it on his own, and I have a feeling Major League Baseball is kind of, based on some of the other teams and how they've acted, have kind of formed a wall around this and said, you're only communicating on a go-forward basis, and there's no need to talk to these other teams. You can't pick up the phone and talk to the Ryan Sanders group and say, hey, this is what's happening. You can't give them a heads up. And both Reed Ryan and I forget Mr.
Sanders.
Yeah, Sanders. They both said we were, blindsided by this. We kind of.
Well, I can confirm. We have two sources in the upper echelon of the Round Rock Express. I won't name names, but let's just say it's as big as it gets without being a Ryan or a Sanders, who 100% confirmed that they did find out on Twitter, just like our guest earlier in the show, the Columbia Fireflies found out on Twitter. So that's not even speculation anymore. That is 100% how it happened.
And so it's just crappy. There's not another way to put it. It's underhanded. It's low dealing, whatever, acronym or adjective you want to tie to it. It's just, there's no reason to have to conduct business this way.
Right. And let's go back to your point too. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're talking about the Round Rock Express right now. We have the Columbia Fireflies. Nobody believes that they are not going to still be an affiliate of a major league team, and business will move on. That's also two of the most respected AAA clubs with their own definitive identity. But you brought up the Valley Cats. They're walking off a plank into a form of collegiate woodbat baseball that we discussed earlier. I don't think it's going to be very successful because it's going to rely on draft eligible seniors. They might not get players. That's the thing that really bums me out, is some of these teams that are going to actually lose essentially their team.
Yeah, I think it's different when you're being asked to be part of a freshman-sophomore woodbat league versus a junior-senior, because your juniors are draft eligible based on baseball's rules. And I don't know if that's going to change either, because why would anybody answer those questions? But you're literally just going into this vast unknown, and Major League Baseball is – as far as I can tell, they asked them to make a decision by the 16th about whether or not they were going to participate as a league and then individual franchises or individual teams in that league, and nobody's answered them yet. So I don't know if they got an extension on that, or they've decided to go a different direction, or decided to go fully independent, or any number of different options. It's just, there's no reason for business to be conducted the way it's being conducted. And that to me is Rob Manfred from the very top and his one baseball. Everything that our conservative friends are afraid of with Joe Biden and the Clintons and the one government is happening in one baseball, but they're not saying a word about that.
No, and you're actually right about that too, because who are they squeezing out? But they're squeezing out Middle America. It is coming. One of the things that I was thinking about with this Round Rock move, beyond the way it was done, we're talking about your favorite franchise on the planet, the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones is a very smart businessman, and so that's why he would split his training camp into three places: California, San Antonio, Austin. He understood the value of building the brand. Does this hurt the Astros brand by essentially?
Absolutely.
So talk about that.
I mean, we're going back to, it's not quite the silly days of 3 years ago where we had a franchise in Frisco and the Rangers had their affiliate in Round Rock, but it's pretty close to that. We are basically taking on an isolationist role with our minor league teams, and we're drawing a line from really Houston South in Texas and saying, great, we own the Sugarland and the Corpus Christi markets. And I'm not digging on Corpus. They're a great team, great franchise, but they're also owned by the Astros.
Right.
They're not going anywhere. They will, in 5 years, pass up Columbus as the all-time lengthiest franchise relationship or affiliate relationship because we own them. Fayetteville's probably not going anywhere. We own them. It's still left. I think we all think Quad Cities is going to stay as our single A affiliate, but nobody knows because nothing's been communicated to anybody. And it's from a marketing standpoint. And I listen to this show. And for those of you that, let me do a little commercial, first of all. If you aren't listening to this show, we told you this was all happening in January of 2020. And for everybody to act surprised, it just means you're not listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube broadcast, and you really should be, because you're missing out on a lot of things in commercial. So we get back to, this idea of building a brand and expanding your market. It makes no sense to me why you would want to limit that. Every time I listen to you talk to a GM from one of these teams in some place far away from here, you talk about a team and the people who follow that team, even though minor league baseball has a different focus, you get attached to those players who are there for a season, or maybe a season and a half, or maybe even half a season in some cases. And you follow those players throughout. So I know that Tri-Cities in upstate New York and Troy, New York, have a bunch of people who follow the Astros because Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, and George Springer played there. Now you're really looking at the only people rooting for the Astros outside of Fayetteville, North Carolina, which again, great organization, are going to be Houston and South. And with the contraction and the lack of interest in radio broadcast, you're going to slowly see the Louisiana affiliates, the mid-Texas affiliates, the Central Texas affiliates of the Astros die off because nobody's paying attention to radio broadcast anymore. So you really become even more insular and even more limited in scope, unless you're the New York Yankees. I mean, realistically, unless you're the New York Yankees, nobody's going to know who you are. And it becomes
the Yankees made the Yankees move where they basically pulled out of an urban environment into a posh,
sure,
rich. I mean, look, we could argue Round Rock and Sugar Land are the same city, so
they are.
Like, they really, that I think is a whole other conversation that I think we can get into once we get through the new year.
Well, the Yankees use the excuse of wanting to have the best player safety and development, and you can only do that in wealthy suburbs. You can't evidently put a fence up around the Staten Island parks anymore.
Yeah, and I know I think Staten Island accepted a bid into the Atlantic League. And so to your point, the New York Penn League, I don't think that even passes muster. Let's talk a little Sugar Land then. I mean, you and I both know both communities well. It's always hard for us on this show because we are fans of both groups of people that run those teams. Obviously happy for Tyler and those guys, bummed for Andrew and those guys out in Round Rock. What are the pluses and minuses of of Sugar Land becoming the new AAA field team, factor in Constellation Field and all that? And then what are maybe some of the drawbacks, do you think?
I think the benefit to the Astros as a franchise obviously is expense. Constellation Field is 28 or 33 miles away, depending on which article you want to look at, from Minute Maid Park. So when you have a call up, you don't have a plane ride, you don't have a delay in somebody getting there. The worst thing that happens is somebody's on a long bus trip and has to make their way back, and they'll make that happen. Constellation Field is a beautiful stadium, and I think arguably probably is now the best AAA stadium in baseball. And Round Rock was, if Constellation Field is 1A, Round Rock was 1B, so you're not losing or gaining much there, other than it's a fantastic facility with an affluent neighborhood around it, which helps evidently, because I only want to see baseball where I can eat at high-end restaurants after the game.
Yeah,
I want to eat the In-N-Out versus the McDonald's. And I think that you've got a good baseball city around the stadium. So there's a lot of youth baseball, and I know you have listeners all over the country or viewers all over the country. We play baseball year round here in Texas, and in Southeast Texas, that area in Sugar Land, Katy, Fort Bend County is competitive year round. They go to national tournaments, they win national tournaments. I mean, there's just kids that play all year round. So you've got a very interested group who you've now made baseball very accessible and affordable for. But we already said they're an affluent neighborhood, so they didn't really need the affordability part of it given to them, right?
Right.
So, there's a lot of good for Houston. There's a lot of good for the franchise. There's easier for James Click and his team to keep an eye on their AAA players. And with the ownership piece, obviously there's going to be some synergy there, and you're going to see a real concerted effort amongst Astros baseball and guys that come up from Fayetteville to Corpus to Sugar Land, knowing the system and playing baseball the Astros way, which you can save your trash can jokes. Yeah, we all have our Astros way, our own version of that. The downside is losing that market in Austin and Central Texas, which is the fastest growing area in the country, depending on what you read, or one of the fastest growing areas in the country between Austin, San Antonio, San Marcos, that area, and basically seeding everything north of College Station to seeding it to the Rangers. I mean, we all expect the Rangers to end up with the Round Rock the AAA affiliate. I don't, that isn't official yet. Something else could happen, but that's what makes the most sense. But this is 2020. Lots of things don't make sense. So I think it's a negative from that standpoint, because you have a generation of fans, and I can tell you as a season ticket holder at Round Rock, when they were the AA affiliate of Houston, it was a much different feel in that stadium for me.
Yeah.
Than it was when the Rangers were running players through there. And that's a personal peccadillo, and I'm sure people from Dallas and Fort Worth and that area are going to be thrilled to come down to Austin for games. But I just didn't see the same excitement around Central Texas with the Rangers that I did with the Astros when they were good.
I think that's categorically true. I mean, I'm sort of like you, even my own. We talk on the show a lot about when you go to a minor league game, you don't really care who wins or loses, except that when it's Round Rock, because I am rooting for those actual guys. Like, that's a part of it.
Well, that's what makes a trip down to Corpus more fun for me than a trip to this point to Sugar Land, is because I know I'm seeing guys that may be up to help the Astros sooner rather than later. Sugar Land up to last week was very much a place where you could watch guys who got missed by organized baseball get another chance, or guys trying to extend their career. So there's some great stories, but it's about the experience of going to a minor league park and having a beer and having a hot dog and having conversation with your friends. And now for me, it's going to be a little bit different. It'll be better because I can go and see and watch players that are going to get up, but it's still AAA, which we can have this argument some later date. There are better players at AA in a lot of respects.
Right.
AAAs are especially in the pitching ranks, are a lot of guys who have had their moment and are trying to catch on a little bit longer.
Okay, so I want to dive into some of the drama. As you can probably know or understand, Twitter is filled with idiots, and a lot of people are trying to chalk this up to just an extension of the Crane-Ryan feud. Even though you and I both know that Crane's wanted to own his AAA park and have it. I mean, there was talk of it being in the Woodlands at some point.
Right.
Do you think that there's any validity to that, or do you think this is sort of more of an ugly happenstance?
I doubt there's a lot of validity to it, other than I understand where it comes from, and I'm a fairly big Nolan Ryan fan, but he gets his feelings hurt every few years and switches allegiances.
It really does.
I mean, it started in 1988. The Astros wouldn't extend him a contract or wanted him to take a pay cut. He went to the Rangers instead as a free agent and pitched far better than anybody was expecting him to, for far longer than anybody was expecting him to. And so then he hung around the Rangers front office for a little bit, and then he got pissed off at them and decided to move his interest back down to Houston. And he stayed there for a while, and Drayton pissed him off. So he went back to the Rangers. The Rangers pissed him off, and then he came back to the Astros up through, I guess, this past season, when President Reed was demoted to some sort of baseball operations role that was less than president. I don't even know, it's special assistant to blah, 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 which is a nice way of saying we don't want you anymore. All that being said, this has I think it's more likely that an offer was made to Ryan Sanders Baseball. Can we buy the Round Rock franchise? And they said no. And so he decided to move down. Crane decided to move down an alternate path. That's a more likely scenario. I don't think there is real animosity, other than Nolan gets his feelings hurt over random crap. Maybe we didn't want to sell his sausages or his beef links or whatever it was this week at Minute Maid Park. But no, I think this is all about Jim Crane seeing an opportunity to own every one of his major league affiliates, except for, right now, the Class A team.
Okay, so let's take a look at what we have. Right now, we know we have the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. We will presume that there will be no drastic sort of
owned
relocation. So they're, no matter what, wherever they are, and I'm not taking anything off the books. We've heard nothing, and then they own the Hooks, and then they own the Round Rock. So the choices comes down to Tri-City, which we ruled out, Quad Cities, which seems likelihood, or what are these low A leagues closer to? I mean, do you think it's as up in the air as anything, or do you think that we're likely looking at the river band extending?
I think that, we could be totally wrong, and this could be totally different by the time we get off this call, because that's how this whole process is
while
going.
we've been on the call, the Dodgers went a third direction, which is what prompted the question. So
yeah, I think if you ask me to bet right now, I think it's Quad Cities. I think we have River Bandits at the Class A level for at least another season. But I think Crane's ultimate play is to find a franchise that he can buy and move somewhere closer geographically to the Houston base of operations. And you and I were kind of talking about what that might look like. If you're looking at where he seems to be focused, you're probably looking at West Louisiana, or Bryan College Station, which has a metro of almost 400,000 people now.
Back to New Orleans.
New Orleans is another place. I mean, that's kind of the range, but I don't know that New Orleans would turn out for a Class A team.
They did not turn out for a AAA team. All right, last question then. One of the things that has me concerned is, there has been rumors and grumbling of realigning the branding and look of the teams to match the parent club. We know that the Dodgers, Yankees, and Cardinals kind of ensure that. Can you see Sugarland doing that? And if they were to become the Sugarland Astros, how colossal a mistake would that be?
Well, I can tell you that I was looking at my Sugarland hats this morning because I meant to bring one and wear one for the show, and I had to take a dog to the vet, and just more problems than your viewers care to talk about, but I forgot. The one benefit that I see immediately is that I'm going to be able to get a new Era 5950 Sugarland hat because they don't sell those. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
I think it would be a giant mistake to align the affiliates with your team colors all the way through, because you have teams, and granted, the Hooks aren't one of them. Sugarland isn't one of them, but you have minor league franchises, minor league teams who have been around for 50, 60, 70, 80 years, who have history and tradition. To throw that away, to line them up with a major league brand, to, guess what, sell less merchandise, because that's what you're going to end up doing. Because as we've talked about, I'm not going to go to I'm not going to go to Constellation Field and buy a Sugarland Astros anything. I already have Astros gear.
Yeah.
I don't need one that says Sugarland instead of Houston.
Or more to the point, you're not going to go buy a Round Rock Ranger something, because now it's aligning yourself with the brand you don't like.
Correct. But I do like the Express brand. I like their faux retro look that I know you're not a big fan of, but that's probably one of my favorite day-to-day hats. I like the Hooks and all of their different looks, and I don't want these teams to have to lose the Copa de Diversión teams. I don't want the teams to have to lose their different looks, their different brands, their alternate names. When you talk about the Hooks and have the Gray Ghosts, or Blue Ghosts, sorry, to have the kind of freedom to do that. And that's one of the big fears I have, because the things that make minor league baseball fun and unique isn't really the baseball. Baseball's the backdrop. It's how in touch they are with their community and how they reflect the community that they play for and they exist in. Because a lot of times the Astros model, and I guess the Yankees model and a few others notwithstanding, this is local ownership in the communities who have a vested interest in those communities doing well, not just their teams. And I think if you start branding things with the major league names, you lose that to a large extent. Nobody wanted to buy the Auburn Astros gear. People wanted to buy Auburn Doubleday gear. And there's a big difference for that. And
well, look at Staten Island Yankees versus their Pizza Rat current alternative logo. Right. That outsells their game day thing. So, and I think also, to be fair, the Astros have never demonstrated the desire to be so top down. I mean, the Express and the Woodpeckers both very organic to their locations.
Yeah, I think the Hooks and the Woodpecker are a good example of what I hope they're going to do. My bigger fear is that Major League Baseball tells teams like the Astros, this is what you're going to do going forward. We want all the navy and orange stuff to be Astros. We want all the navy and white stuff to be Yankees. We want all your Dodgers teams to be Dodger blue and white. And I think that would be a huge, huge mistake.
It would be a mistake. All right, well, that wraps us up for this episode. We'll be back for our Christmas special. I know you've got some. You're going to be grumpy on our Christmas special. I'm excited about it.
I was told it was a Festivus special.
Yours is you're exactly right. Andy, thanks a lot for being on. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. And we're very thankful to have you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and Jess and Vader and all of your family as well.
This just in. News from around the baseball diamond.
Now, normally we have you on, Andrew Nelson, for Raiders of the Lost Diamond, but maybe that still fits. But you're coming on our breaking news segment because we're recording this right now, Thursday, whatever it is, and it's Corona time. But the thing we've been hearing about since January happened. Tell everybody you are representing the now.
Yeah, the St. Paul Saints, soon to be, or maybe officially by the time this comes out, the Minnesota Twins AAA affiliate.
Okay, so right before you were on, we had Andy Tom Chesson on to talk about the other part of that we'd been hearing about since January, Sugarland Skeeters joining. And we did pros and cons of all of it. I can do the same thing for me. Pros and cons from a Twins perspective, both losing, was it Rochester?
Yep.
And then gaining St. Paul. And what are the pros and cons for both the fans and for the Twins?
Sure. So for the Twins, it's pretty easy. Their AAA is a 20-minute drive from Target Field, with the Saints becoming their AAA. The Saints, they have a really nice facility. The Saints are pretty widely acknowledged as having the best field and stadium in independent league baseball. So even though it's small for a AAA facility, it's really high quality, and they built it with expansion possibility in mind. So that's a possibility later on also. There's already a built up local fan base. Not that the Twins, necessarily need that since it's already home territory. But those are the big advantages for the Twins. They already used it as their alternate site this year. The Saints actually ran in conjunction with the Twins for some of the seasons. So they're familiar with the facilities already. They're good facilities. The Saints is a quality organization. Granted, probably a lot of those people are gone once the Twins move their people in, but who knows? So
that is it, though, too. I didn't really think about that. Real quick, one question. So I got to imagine that when you look at teams as national brands, the Twins and the Astros are probably at a relatively same reach, right? I think they have about 1 million likes on Facebook. About the same. They're not the Yankees or Dodgers or the Mets.
No.
Does it hurt them by not expanding that geographical footprint? Does it hurt the brand, or do you think they care?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the Rochester Red Wings have a pretty big following in their area, but they're also a team with 100 plus years of history behind them.
Sure.
I think they're pretty highly regarded as an organization. I think that people generally think they're pretty well run. Their branding is good. They do really great alternate branding too. So I think that they stand on their own as far as a following goes. So I'm not sure how much of a Twins following it built in New York necessarily. It's hard for me to say as a Minnesotan, but I know that there were plenty of Minnesota fans that followed Rochester and really had quite a bit of affection for them. They were Twins affiliate, AAA affiliate for, I want to say 14 years or so, something like that.
That's a long time. I mean,
since the early 2000s. So they've developed a lot of prominent Twins players.
Now, how do you feel about it personally because I think you're a little bit like me, man. We really we don't just we really love these lower levels of baseball.
Yeah.
So how does it feel for you to be a Saint? Does it increase your love of it? Does it?
How do I feel as a Saints fan?
As a Saints fan.
Yeah. I'm really of two minds about it. So, as a Twins fan, I think it's really cool that I'll be able to see a Twins AAA affiliate, that I'll be able to say AAA baseball at all in Minnesota. The closest AAA team to us previously was the Iowa Cubs down in Des Moines, and that's a 4-hour drive or so from where I live, 4 or 5 hours. I've been there, but it's not an easy trip that I can just make all the time. Yeah. And I'm not a Cubs fan, so I don't have a huge interest in rooting for the Iowa Cubs. So that's exciting to have that fan possibility as a Twins fan, really. As a Saints fan, I'm worried, and I kind of am mourning in advance for things that may be lost. I know that we've talked a little bit before about, well, what difference is it really going to make for me as a baseball fan? There's probably going to be better quality play that I can watch. They're still going to do goofy promotions, and it's still going to be fun to go to. But the Saints really, from the start, were built kind of in opposition to Major League Baseball.
To the point that their owners were actually very vocal about, we have no interest in becoming.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that money talks.
Right. So they were a founding member of the Northern League back in 1993. The Northern League was started by some minor league owners and operators who were tired of the kind of overreach they thought of Major League Baseball. Sounds really familiar. And wanted to strike off on their own and do things the way they wanted to. And Mike Veck was the original majority owner of the St. Paul Saints. People may know him from Disco Demolition Night.
Yep.
With the White Sox.
White Sox, yeah.
Yeah. Famously or infamously, however you want to look at it. But then he also worked with several minor league teams before that. He really built up the Miami and then Fort Myers Miracle before he worked with the Saints. And it was really irreverent, and it was sold as, this is baseball, and it's different than what you're going to see over in Minneapolis. It's outside, it's close, you can interact with it much more easily than Major League Baseball, and it's cheap.
Yeah.
It was huge. They sold out all the time, like for years on end, to the point where they had to figure out a way to not sell out because it was actually hurting their attendance, because people figured they wouldn't be able to get tickets to games.
It's like the hot girl in high school. She never gets asked out because everybody always figures she's got. Yeah. And that's not even an exaggeration. That comes from somebody who used to work in that organization. And they did crazy things, like they hired a guy, they signed and fielded a guy named Dave Stevens, who had no legs, but he had a dream of playing professional baseball. They signed Darryl Strawberry and gave him a chance to get back on his feet and get back into baseball when everybody else was tired of him. Yeah. And it worked. They signed JD Drew when felt like he was getting screwed over by the Philadelphia Phillies. He played a full season with the Saints. They signed Isla Borders, the first woman to play men's professional baseball in the post-integration era. So they were the first team to give her a chance. You're not going to see that kind of stuff in affiliated baseball. You're not going to be the team's properties, and that's it. Here's what's got me worried is this is Astro the Grouch.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way a Saints affiliate gets away with this.
Yeah.
Sorry, with a Twins affiliate, because it hurts the bigger MLB brand. And
right.
Obviously I'm an Astros fan, but I also like fun stuff, and that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Curveball.
Yeah.
So let's take another macro look at it then, because one of the things that's got, when we talked with Andy with Go Astros about, so the Astros now own part of the Skeeters. They own the Woodpeckers, and they own the Hooks.
but who knows where that other A-ball team comes from? What is the rest of the affiliation for the Twins? How do you project, or do you have a projection of how it's going to go down?
Sure. Well, I'll start with what I think I know. So I've heard educated guesses or rumors about the Marlins organization, and that ties in with the Twins organization, is that supposedly the Pensacola Blue Wahoos are going to be the Marlins' new double A affiliate. So the Twins are going to have to get a new double A. There aren't double A teams anywhere near the upper Midwest. So I have no idea where that's going to come from. I would guess maybe the new Mid-Atlantic League, or the Eastern League. But it's hard to say. Maybe they're going to reclassify Wichita because they're without a dance partner now. I've heard that they're going to go down to double A, and I don't know. I mean, that's just a thing I've heard on podcasts and stuff. I don't.
Yeah, I've heard them projecting the Texas League and going as far as that. I've seen that floated, which I guess makes some geographical sense. It's one state away from Oklahoma,
right? And Texas League might be where the Saints find a double A affiliate. It's the same time zone, at least.
Yeah.
Not particularly close, but what can you do? I think they're going to retain the Cedar Rapids Colonels in the Midwest League. That just makes sense for them.
And I got to imagine they're going to keep Fort Myers because that's just a strong relation.
So Florida State League is going down to low A. So I think that Cedar Rapids will be their high A, and then they're going to have to drum up a double A somewhere middle of the country-ish. But I mean, there isn't a lot to choose from as far as double A affiliations.
We just have about 30 seconds left. One of the things I have a big fear of is a homogenization of teams where all of a sudden they start to look and feel like the parent club. Am I overreacting, or do you feel like, are the billionaires smart enough to know that that's a bad way to ruin their business?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the kind of petty and small concerns that I have as a Saints fan, but at the very least, the Saints look is going to look different next year if they're a Twins affiliate. If you can, I'll show again my Saints. This is a Saints jersey, a replica jersey I had made up, customized. And the last few years since the Saints moved to their new stadium, they've really adopted kind of a vintage Dodgers look. And that's a nod to their history as a Dodgers affiliate, the old Saints history as a Dodgers affiliate in the 40s and 50s. Some of the most famous baseball players to play in St. Paul, Roy Campanella, Duke Snider, Leo DeRocher, were Dodgers guys. The Saints have always been really big about acknowledging St. Paul baseball history. The STP on their caps is a nod to a logo that was used by the St. Paul Gophers, which was a really prominent early 20th century black baseball team. So I worry that some of that distinct St. Paulness, especially because part of their success and part of why they mean so much to people from the area is because they're an East Side Twin Cities thing.
Got it.
The Twins have always been on the west side of the cities, either in Bloomington or Minneapolis for a long time now. And even though St. Paul's the capital, it's the slightly smaller of the Twin Cities. It's not quite as glitzy. It doesn't have as much going on. So I think St. Paulites and East Siders kind of feel a little looked down on by Minneapolitans and like people who think of the Twin Cities as Minneapolis.
Got it.
And so like St. Paul has been our baseball team. It's St. Paul's baseball team. And the players belonged to the Saints and belong to St. Paul. And that's something that gets lost when they're a part of a major league organization now. And it's a little bit different in that, it's still our major league club. Like we're Twins fans.
Yeah.
But it's not the same local tie into the community that you have from a city team as opposed to a state/regional team.
The Minor League Mind with Jess Knaster.
All right, so we're jumping into the Minor League Mind. And Jess, this is all over the place.
We've had the Columbia Fireflies on the show talking about getting dumped on Twitter. We have had Andy Tom Chesson reacting to news that, and from my own sources, the Round Rock Express were dumped on Twitter. We can only assume the Rochester Red Wings were dumped on Twitter, and that's really been the major moving pieces so far. Where is all this sitting with any degree of clarity right now?
I think the main clarity comes with not necessarily what's going to happen, but also the question that's been asked in addition to what teams are going to survive and what leagues are going to look like and all that stuff is when are we going to know? And with a bunch of stories coming out recently, it seems like there's more talk centering around December 1st as a release date. And of course, Major League Baseball hasn't said anything, when I assume it's going to be them who releases everything at once. But in several different places, I've seen December 1st mentioned as the date that it's all going to happen. And so in terms of clarity regarding that, I think that's really what we have right now. And I would like to say it is very 2020 that Chuck Schumer, senator from New York, broke the news on Twitter, seemingly broke the news on Twitter that the Rochester Red Wings are going to be affiliated with the Washington Nationals, because of course that's what a U.S. senator should be talking about right now.
Instead of packing U-Hauls for the occupant of the White House.
Oh, brother. I mean, I do have to say, though, in light of that, because there have been people who have complained, that's going to be a big deal for the Red Wings losing one AAA or losing the affiliate from one team, but keeping their AAA affiliation with somebody else, because that's a ton of money for the city of Rochester.
And not been the case. Like we know that some AAA teams are going to lose out because the 3 independent clubs that have been added. I believe all 3 of the AAA level. Is that correct? Somerset also.
Somerset's set to go into AA. They're going to take the spot in the Eastern League. But no, the talk has been that San Antonio and Wichita are going to drop down from AAA to AA. And unconfirmed, but it has been part of the proposal all along, that the Fresno Grizzlies are going to drop down from the Pacific Coast League and go all the way down into the California League, which is going to be moved from high A, advanced A, to low A. So the Fresno Grizzlies supposedly are going to tumble all the way down the ladder.
So a question then for you as we kind of move toward this, because the show, this is our Thanksgiving episode. We have a Christmas episode, holiday special planned, but I envision you and I popping on for little special drop-ins as this begins to shake out. We're not going to leave our listeners in the lurch, but does someone know exactly what's going to happen in December 1st as an arbitrary date, or is December 1st the date they're hoping they get stuff done and they could still miss that? I mean, it just seems so unfair to all of these teams at the lower levels to not know where they're going and if they're going to even have affiliated ball.
Well, since we never got a full honest answer from Major League Baseball when this proposal was leaked last year, I don't think we'll ever know how much has really changed. But it sounds like from little details that are coming out that for the most part, what was talked about last year is what's going to happen. So I'd say that Major League Baseball pretty much knows what they want. There was an ominous quote from J.J. Cooper, who writes for Baseball America, who said that he doesn't know for a fact, but he believes 115 of the 120 teams are solidified, that he thinks he could call out who those are, not necessarily what their affiliations will be, but I mean, and when you figure we only have a few confirmed, and then a few more owned by their parent clubs, that leaves a lot that would have to have been found out through other ways, unless he's guessing. But he has been as spot on as he's been. I don't think he is. I don't know necessarily that the major league teams know what's happening or know what's going to happen. I believe they were given the option of ranking who they wanted at each level. But it sounds like because there are teams who are complaining that they don't like their new affiliates, or they don't like that they can't keep their old affiliates, and therefore they're going to have to get new ones at certain levels, then maybe it is only Major League Baseball who has a full grasp on what's happening.
Do you envision Oh, sorry. Not do you envision. Do you imagine, one of the big takeaways from all of this, it's very 2020, it's very Trump that we're firing people over Twitter. Do you imagine that this is because Jim Crane is cold and heartless and can't pick up the phone to Round Rock? Or is Major League Baseball saying it's going to leak, but we don't want anything coming from you, and that means talking to your affiliates?
I think there's probably maybe less desire for there to be actual talk between Major League and minor league teams themselves, regardless of what Major League Baseball is or is not requesting their teams to do. And I think it's as simple as when you're breaking up with somebody, or if you need to have any awkward conversation with anybody where you're no longer going to do business with them, it's a lot better and easier to do it as non-interpersonal as possible. So you're saying that not like I'm speaking from any experience, because truly I'm not.
So you're saying that Major League Baseball is following the advice of the Bobs from Office Space. They're just going to fix the glitch.
I mean, Major League Baseball, I think, maybe has instilled on their owners that the contract is over. The PBA is complete. There is no reason. There is no legal obligation to do anything anymore. And so do what you will, but also do what we want you to do. And if what you want to do is different than what we want you to do as Major League Baseball, then don't do what you want to do, because do what we want you to. And that is keep quiet so that we can say it all at once. And I think, as we've seen with every little release, every little leak, whether it's been from the minor league teams, from the major league teams, from a beat writer from a local newspaper, whatever it may be, the amount of people that are upset and the amount of people that are happy is a very lopsided ratio. And if Major League Baseball can release it all in the middle of the night, whenever they choose to, maybe they can avoid some heat.
And now, the Big League Chew, an eye on the majors. Brought to you by Zoomer Sport.
So we are going to Scott McIntyre live from the Mistake by the Lake, Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, I didn't lose anything here.
Yeah, Scott, let's talk a little Theo Epstein.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff about this dude. Anything from joining the Mets, joining the Nashville professional team.
Correct. Yep.
Fixing baseball.
The commissioners are right. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's easy to say that Theo Epstein is the most influential person in baseball in the 21st century. I don't think to me at least, there's not a lot of argument in that. He has broken 2 curses so far, and the third curse is in the commissioner's office, like you talked about. So that would be a great place to go fix things. Yeah. It's not surprising that Theo leaves the Cubs. This is the same MO that he had in Boston, 9 years there, and then he left. It kind of comes from the Bill Walsh style of management. Who don't stay in a place of leadership in one spot more than a decade, or you'll get stale and things will start going backward. Epstein's done a great job at adhering to that and being incredibly successful. I think, based on everything I've seen and everything I've read, I think that what Epstein really wants is a shot at ownership and not to have to argue with other people that are above him. So when you mention the Nashville ownership group that Dave Dombrowski is already a part of, that makes a lot of sense to me, Jim. That makes a lot of sense to me.
And we do know that it has always been in Manfred's plan to get to 32. I've seen a potential American League division that made up of the Astros, Rangers, Nashville, and Arizona, which makes some degree of geographical sense. But let's go real quick to what Epstein said about fixing the game, and that Manfred's attempts to fix the game were wrong. And I'm asking you already knowing the answer to this. And Theo Epstein takes some blame on himself, saying, I'm part of the reason that analytics has done it. Is that the issue, not getting the ball in play? Is that really what will help make the game more exciting?
Well, I think it does. I mean, we talked about, I've said it ad nauseum on the show, right? That ratings go up whenever when stolen bases go up. It's just, I mean, the two things go together. There's more excitement to the game. I've been watching Korean baseball this year, and they're hitting the ball, and hit and run, and putting people in play. There's only so much you can take of either a guy hitting a ball 400 feet or striking out.
Yeah.
That's almost like, the NBA just shooting shots from 28 feet or a dunk. Those are the only, oh wait, never mind. Sorry. But I think you do have to get the ball alive and back in play, and everything's cyclical and things come around. Now, if you look at the way Epstein won a championship in Boston, it was very analytical. It was very much, coming into the thing of, we don't know anything we're talking about. They don't think we know anything about what we're talking about. And we're going to take the world by storm. And they did. But in Chicago, he had a big thing about clubhouse leadership. There wasn't the same blueprint. That's what I think makes Epstein so good in the annals of baseball history. He took a team in Chicago and put that leadership, guys who had been there, guys who were clubhouse presences. And when they had that rain delay in the seventh inning, in the extra innings of the Game 7, the World Series, and after Chicago had given up a 3-run lead and went down into the clubhouse, and nobody was panicking, nobody was freaking out. They were having a meeting, and at the end of the day, that was on Epstein's watch. If anybody is going to be able, if anyone comes to mind that could fix the game, it was Epstein. I just don't know if he wants a commissioner's job. If he doesn't like dealing with one owner, how the hell is he going to like dealing with 30 or 32 of them?
That's true. So, when do you think, best guess from the Scott McIntyre mind, that you think we might see expansion?
It won't be immediately.
Did the pandemic make it quicker because you can get those dues?
Yeah, I think you've also got to get through the CBA. I don't know if you can just, you have no collective bargaining agreement. You might be doing a strike, and hey, we've got 2 new teams. I don't know if that works out too. I think you got to get over that hurdle first. So I would 2022, maybe you'll hear the announcement about it. In 23, 24 is when you'd have a team start. It does take time to start up a new team, as you see in MLS. They're in Austin and also in St. Louis.
And I'm excited.
In the NHL.
I can't believe I'm excited, but whatever.
Yeah, me too. I am too. I hate to admit that. I'm really looking forward to a new downtown stadium in St. Louis and going to watch soccer.
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it? But I think that baseball doesn't do this really for at least another 2 solid years, maybe 3. Manfred probably had a timetable that was quicker than that, but other things have happened this year.
Sure. All right. So real quick, I know that you're in transit. Thank you for stopping.
Oh, dude. Hey, look, I found a really cool. If you're ever in Cleveland, this place has a lot of beer and it's good. It's called Hooley House. So that's their cheap plug. They didn't even know they got it.
Shout out to Hooley House. So we've been talking all episode with Andrew about both the Astros and the Twins minor league system. Real quick, how many of the teams do the Cardinals own in their system, and your overall thought on how teams are finding out via Twitter? I revealed on a segment earlier that my sources in the Round Rock Express confirmed that they found out the exact same moment I did.
That seems to be the way that things get announced, right? Directors of cybersecurity for the whole country and minor league teams get told they no longer exist through Twitter. Seems to, I don't know. There's a weird correlation there. Things are, I'll put it this way. The most prevalent thing that we've seen of people getting, having all of their business announcements happen through Twitter, the majority of the country decided they didn't like that, and that person is being removed from their job. I think baseball execs that do the same thing from their teams down to the minor leagues kind of got the same feeling there. If you're letting people know via Twitter, you're a scumbag, period.
All right. Well, that's a good thing. And I do want to say that, Scott, as always, so thankful for you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the kids. And we will be back on after Thanksgiving for some Christmas fun.
I am thankful that you and I went to a Tulsa Drillers game a few years ago. And you had this epiphany that, hey, this might be a lot of fun. And you know what? You were right.
Swinging for the Fences. Inspirational stories from the game of baseball.
So on this Thanksgiving episode, we are excited to bring you a brand new segment called Swinging for the Fences. And it is kind of my reaction to 2020. I wanted to start 2021 off on the right foot, and we're going to focus on some of the inspirational stories that come from the game. Both the inspirational stories from teams, from fan bases, basically the baseball community. Baseball does so much for us. It allows us to put bygones aside, to put the stress of the day behind us and enjoy something that is pure and perfect, even in its lack of purity and imperfections. And it's still a game made up of people who oftentimes will do things for other people that are inspiring and that maybe will help us be motivated to be better humans. And so we're excited to have this first episode on Thanksgiving, and we're going to be visiting with one of our favorite teams out there, friends of the show, the Keene Swamp Bats. So we are super excited to welcome back to Let's Get To, friend of the show from the Keene Swamp Bats, Kevin Waterson. Kevin, how's it going, man?
Jim, great to be with you. Great to be with your listeners. It's going well. Getting ready for another season.
So we are getting ready for another season. I want to start to jump in talking about the fundraising campaign. How did that go?
You know, we don't do many fundraisers. We get tremendous support from our community and our fans every year. But this was kind of a special year. We've identified some real needs. And the fundraiser truthfully blew us away. It blew us away. We set a goal for $10,000. We hit it so quickly. We said, let's raise it to 20. And we went right by 20. We almost got to 30. We leveled off at 27 and said, thank you to everyone.
What does that mean for you? I mean, it's Thanksgiving time, right? Like, obviously it's time to be thankful. We all know that everybody's stretched financially with COVID. What does that mean to you that so many people were willing to jump in and help out?
You know, outside of the baseball and the facility side of life, it really spoke to us about our fan base, our player base, their parents, and what we meant to so many people. Because I think sometimes you don't recognize the value that you bring to a community. And this fundraiser, it certainly for us brought that out from our fans. And we received donations from many of the players, ex-players 10, 15 years ago, their parents. It told us they really remembered their days in Keene and what they got out of it.
And I guess from a more practical perspective, it helps you to know, yes, there will be a 2021 Keene Swamp Bat season.
Exactly. We are going, our fundraising will allow us to raise the bar on our facility. We're going to, new turtle, new batting cages, new turf, everything you can think of on the baseball side. And then we thought it was time to build a brand new pavilion to raise the fan. So we're doing that. And that's for our fans to raise that fan experience at our games every night.
It's for your fans and a certain podcast host from Texas.
Yeah, we look forward. We got to do a show from that pavilion, Joe.
Oh, I'm 100% in. I've already planned. We're bringing mics. We're bringing cameras. We're gonna have a great time. I wanted to ask to take your pulse of where baseball is now. I don't know how much you're following this contraction stuff. Teams are finding out over Twitter that they don't have an affiliate anymore. Like, this is all happening, and MLB seems to be jumping into the collegiate summer league space. Is that going to affect your ability to get players, or is it too early to tell yet?
I think I'm first of all, I'm very aware of what MLB is doing. Do I think it's going to affect our ability in the NECBLs? I'm going to say to you, no. Our league is so well established in the United States. It's just a matter of, if I'm not going to get that great player, I'll get that great player. And I truly feel that way. We've been recruiting, and we have our roster is made up of the same great programs across the country as in the past. I've talked to coaches about what's going on with MLB and the Appalachian League. and the New York Penn League. And I can tell you, and I don't mind saying it, this concept isn't exactly being well received by Division I and coaches across the country. It's just flat out not.
The Appy League is one thing. The plan for the New York Penn League of draft eligible seniors, I don't see that working. I don't see. To me, it seems like they're throwing at them a bad idea, knowing these teams will turn it down, and they can be like, "Well, we offered you just didn't want to do it." Right.
And I don't think any of us ought to be naive, nor do I think we are in the baseball world. I think the MLB, I think their strategy here is based on one thing, and that's called greed. They've been wanting to get rid of some minor league teams for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And I think they were able to get under the radar due to COVID, and the politicians were able to run the other way without taking a hit. Because let's face it, we just lost however many, 40, 50 minor league teams, thousands of jobs, of which the politicians always tell us is so important.
Yeah.
MLB is looking to save, what, a couple $1 million per team? Really? These billionaires need to save a couple $1 million a year. I don't, as you can tell, Jim, I hide nothing in terms of my feelings for the extent of their greed. And that's really what it's about.
It's very much about greed. It's very much where, and I'll say this to you during this segment, but this show is pledging we are going to cover or visit no MLB parks next year. We are going to put our spotlight and our voice, as limited as it might be, on the teams that are still doing it for the right reasons, including the Keene Swamp Bats. So I got to imagine, as you look through 2020 into 2021, this vaccine news has to at least be welcome, that at least it looks like we'll all have something by the time your season starts. Yeah,
that's a great point. And if we look at last year, if we learned anything last year, the challenges of COVID were two. First of all, was safety for our fans and safety for our players. And then secondly, overcoming restrictions from governmental bodies. I think the vaccine really addresses both of those challenges. And so as we are 7 months away from opening night, maybe 7.5, I think we have a strong likelihood of playing a season next year.
And I cannot wait to be out there. Kevin, thank you so much for jumping on Let's Get Two. I want to have you on before your season kicks off to preview the 2021 Keene Swamp Bats.
Anytime you want to look at our roster, we're happy to talk rosters. That's always fun.
And now, on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, James Christopher.
So that does wrap up this Turkey Day edition of Let's Get Two. And I know this is going to be a very weird Thanksgiving for everyone. In the most best case scenario, I guess, we're faced with the heartbreaking decision of who to spend it with. It's not safe to spend it with whole families. Jessica and I are going to be spending it with Jordan and the grandkids, which means not as much time with her mom or my mom because we want to keep them safe. In the worst case scenario, it's about dealing with Thanksgiving with family members no longer here because of the pandemic or in a hospital because of the pandemic. And, it's a necessary sacrifice to make, that we can't just be with all of our families because we want to be with them next year. It reminds me of the line in Jaws, because everything reminds me of a line in Jaws where, if we work now, we can save August. Well, we can save April. We can save opening day if we are diligent and focused now and being safe now. So we definitely understand that this is going to be a very difficult Thanksgiving for everyone, and we hope that we all just stay positive and stay focused. I would like to use the end of this for a shameless plug. Those of you who know me well know that my business is in independent film. I'm a filmmaker, run a film festival, and I teach film. Independent film is kind of my life. And one of our feature films from many years ago is a movie called Turkey Day. So if you're interested in a very independent, little bit raunchy Thanksgiving romantic comedy, I highly recommend it. It played a bunch of film festivals, and generally speaking, audiences dig it. It's like I said, very independent, very low budget, so all of what comes with that. But it's kind of my love letter to Thanksgiving. It's my love letter to National Lampoon's Vacation. So I'll put a link down here if you want to check it out. Again, a lot of fun. Maybe not for kids, but if you enjoy movies like that, I think you'll dig this one, especially if you're into independent film. That is our show. We'll be back in a few weeks with our holiday special that we have been hard at work for. Well, it'll be about 6 weeks worth of work going into this. So we're very excited. I think it's going to be a little bit different for us and maybe represent some new directions for the show. So again, happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe, stay sane, and until next time, let's get to